Hi guys, I'm back again. I'm just preparing the 9015. I'm doing a few little bits and pieces to this in readiness to bring it onto the channel for some accuracy testing, and I also eventually will show you how an expensive rifle like this compares to some of the much cheaper rifles that I've got. So that will certainly be interesting for down the line. I'm just prepping a new barrel for it. This is an old BSA barrel. It's a 177. It's chokeless and it's got a particularly fast twist to this one. I'm getting a reasonable feel now with these slugs through that. I've polished this up really well inside. The slugs fit quite nicely in there, so hopefully that'll be another little project down the line. But these have just arrived. These are the new RWS superfields, the ultra heavies. So if you saw the last video on the standard superfields, I'm a big fan of these superfields, especially considering that they're relatively inexpensive. These are the brand new ultra heavy versions of them. Now these are quoted at 9.7 grains. Look similar, just a slight bit larger than your standard superfields. Typical RWS quality. They look incredibly clean in there. There's barely a breath of wind outside, so I'm going to shoot up the farm shortly and we're going to run these out. I'll zero the rifle at 25 yards and then, considering how little a breeze we've got today, I'm going to run these out to 50 metres. I'm looking forward to trying these downrange. I think that additional mass of the pellet, the additional weight, I think that may well help with the stability of these a bit further out. I'll see you at the farm. Right, usual spot, 25 yards. I'm just going to establish a zero quickly with these before pushing it out to 50 metres over the other side. We've got a little tiny bit of a headwind, only a couple of miles an hour blowing towards us, sort of being funnelled down this little alleyway here, but that won't really make much of a difference. RWS superfields, ultra heavies, 9.6, 9.7 grains, something like that. I've just got a standard crosshair target out at the moment. Okay, so it's dropped a little bit lower than a streamline would do at this range, but nothing that a scope adjustment wouldn't take care of. Okay, I'll quickly run you down there. So we've got a few in there. What's that, 10, 12 mil? Little bit of a spread. I just pulled the barrel through, so I expect these groups will probably tighten up, but the gun's zeroed for streamlines at this 25 yards, so that's where a streamline would be impacting. We'll get the targets out now, we'll get them out to 50 metres. I'll do that on this bigger card here and we'll see how they run. Okay, here's my firing point. Will that focus? No, of course it won't. Right, we've got the GoPro out there as well. And we're here. Right, let's get this set up. Okay, annoyingly that wind's picked up a little bit, but the target's out at 50 metres. I've just adjusted the focus on my scope. Right, I've got a dozen pellets there. I'm going to have to apply a little bit of holdover. Looking at the drop already at the 25 yards a minute ago, I reckon we're going to have probably between 2.5 mil dots of drop at this sort of range. So I'll apply some holdover and I'll see if I can get them roughly on that lower crosshair on my target. But again, we're only group shooting. We're just trying to rule out any shooter error. We're basically looking at how these groups are deflected in the wind, and we can also then compare against some of the other brands of pellets to see roughly what the drops look like over this sort of distance. So group shooting only. So RWS superfields, ultra heavies, 50 metres. Let's go. Right, so I'm using 1 mil dot of holdover on the top crosshair that's drawn on the card, and this just came in just below the second crosshair that I've drawn on this card. So we've got 2.5 mil dots where that was, so about 2 mil dots of drop from 25 yards 0 point. Keep an eye on this little ribbon here. There's not a lot of breeze, but there is still a little bit there. Normally I'd be aiming off a tiny bit with this sort of breeze. At the moment it's completely slack, but you watch it, it keeps picking up and swirling around a little. Right, so them ones have gone literally through the same hole at 50 metres. I could probably do with a bit more magnification on the scope really for this sort of range, but we'll get by. They're bang on the centre line, but there's a little bit of elevation change between them. Right, that wind had picked up when I took that shot, and that's the first one that's gone to the left side of the crosshair on the card. What do you want? You're gonna go and get the targets in, are you? Don't tread on the things, Pete. Get a goat, they said. It'll be fun, they said. You going to eat it? Right, come on. Oh, now you're having a wee. Right, come on, you've got to go, mate. Come on, let's go. Go, 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 go. Come on, let's go. Good boy. Go. He's hilarious, but he's an absolute pain in the butt. I seem to have two distinct groups here, which might well mean that there's a bit of a variation in pellet weight throughout the tin of the random ones I've picked so far. Right, well, first impressions is that's a fair spread on there. The wind's not particularly gusty. I mean, it's picked up a little bit now, but I think really what I need to do now then is get some streamlines out and see how they're performing in the same conditions. Right, I'll take you down there quick. Right, I'll stick the footage from the GoPro up now. Okay, well, that's a little bit disappointing. What we got there, probably 45, maybe 50 mil if you was to go around that. And the wind's not particularly strong, so I think what I need to do now then, I'll get some streamlines through it. I may need to revisit this through a different barrel. The sight picture's not great either, so it might well mean that they're not getting a particularly good seal in that barrel. This particular CZ barrel in the Catran's also got a particularly tight choke in this one, so may well be that it just doesn't like that barrel particularly well, but I will revisit these. I've got 1,000 of them to use now, so I need to find something that shoots them. Right, let's get some streamlines out then. What you doing? Oi! Come on, clear off. Go, go, go. Come on, fat boy. Are you desperate to eat that bit of ribbon? Oh, he's done a dump. Lovely. Right, go, mate. Okay, I've just swapped the card over. Got some streamlines here. Well, that downrange performance of the Ultra Heavy so far is not what I was expecting. The groups are a little bit broader than I was hoping for. Once we've got the QIS's downrange, then we'll be able to actually make a comparison. I'll be interested now to try the Norma pellets, because Norma have got a pellet which is most likely made by RWS. They're the same group of companies, and they market that as an FT pellet which shoots out to 55 yards, so basically what we're shooting now. The groups of those ultra heavies, that definitely wouldn't be good enough to be an FT pellet, certainly not through this. So I think we'll try it through the anschutz as well, and we'll get a better idea how they perform through a few different barrels before making any real judgment on them. But certainly through the Catran, not great. Right, streamlines, I've not pulled the barrel through or anything. 50 metres. Surprised my flag's still working, is it? Yeah. Right, so there's an awful lot less drop on the streamlines already. There's at least a mil dots less drop. In fact, it's probably nearly 1.5 dots less drop with the streamlines compared to the ultra heavies, and they're of similar weight. Although they're called an ultra heavy, they're 9.7 grain, so only a touch more than a streamline. These are grouping lovely. I was hoping to find something half the price of the QYS's that would group like this, but so far, no. These are going exactly where I think they would do. Right, I'll run you down there. Right, so that's the streamlines. 45 mil maybe, something like that. We'll measure it up when we get home. So the bulk of the group was here. As that wind was swirling, we had a bit of a gust when I took this shot here, and I watched this one come over here, and as that wind was picking up the other way, we've got a few just to the right hand side of the card, but they've gone exactly where I anticipated they would do. They would have been dead easy to keep in a 40 mil HFT FT target. Back to the drawing board then, I think, with the ultra heavies. I've just tested out the anschutz. I've just run a couple of slugs through that new barrel I've just prepped from about 10 yards. That's one heck of a ding. That's with the 13 grain JSBs. They run through that barrel beautifully. I've polished the barrel. I've got a lovely even slide of that pellet all the way through. There's no choke in that barrel. It was only a scrapper, so I don't know how well it's going to actually pan out down the line, but I'm just learning how to prep the barrels and everything else. But it'd be good if I can actually get something to work with these slugs. I've got to come back to them sooner rather than later, so It's looking promising. At least it fires. Right, I'm back. That was fun. So my first impressions of the super heavies when I was shooting them at the farm weren't great. The groups were fairly wild, but that's the sunshade of the CP scope. That's 40mm in outside diameter. That covers the group of the streamlines. And the ultra heavies, these ones around the outside, you could have probably snuck those into that group. So a 40mm HFT and FT target at 50 metres, you'd have probably split those. So although we've got a more distinct group with the streamlines here and a couple of wayward ones as the breeze dropped and picked up, they've obviously given the slightly more consistent group. The grouping wasn't quite as consistent, but actually not as bad as I first thought. So I think next thing to do is to try these through a few different guns. I definitely need to try these through the anschutz barrel. I'm fairly certain these have got a lot more to give. As I've mentioned before, it's never usually a good bet just to go and buy various tins of pellets and hope they work in your rifle, because every rifle and every barrel combination is different. So if you get the opportunity to buy some tester packs of these, it's certainly a good option really. Once you've found some that work, note down the batch code off of the back of your pellet tins and then try and buy as many of that batch as you can afford, and then you'll be on to a winner. What was immediately noticeable though was the amount of drop between the ultra heavies. Now these are 9.7 grains they're quoted at, and then the streamlines are 9.56 grains. But you've got 3¼ inches of drop here on the streamlines, which is quite normal. My actual aim point was right up here for the ultra heavies, and you've got essentially 5 inches of drop to the middle of that group, so 13 centimetres and just over 8 centimetres for the QISs. So I think they've got a bit more to give. The QISs performed okay. I could have actually probably shot tighter groups in them conditions today with the JSP heavies that I've been using for a while. So these are certainly going to perform well at shorter ranges. I did a bit of extra shooting before I came home off camera, and at 30 metres these were actually shooting some really nice tight groups. So probably for mid to close range shooting are going to be absolutely perfect if the conditions allow with the right barrel. I certainly think these could be pushed out further. I also managed to get my barrel in, so I've still got a bit more work to do, but the actual machining's done. It fits. I managed to get a few shots off. So still a bit more work to do on the anschutz. Hopefully by next week I can have that ready to bring onto the channel. I've got a new old stock put together for that, something that you may not have seen on my channel before, and you may not have seen it on my Facebook page either. So hopefully we can get the anschutz into service, get it on the channel, and we can do some more accuracy testing with that. And I really want to show you how these expensive rifles compare to the likes of the S200, because I think you might be surprised at what some of these cheaper rifles can do, especially when you compare them to some of the high-end stuff. So I've got a busy few weeks coming up. I've got to finish off the slug barrel, a bit more testing of these through a few different barrels. So it's going to be a busy couple of weeks, guys. So I will catch you in the next one.